Welcome back to Real Crime Stories, the podcast that brings you crime stories from around the world. It was a quiet winter morning in Oregon, cold, still, and unremarkable. 13-year-old Miranda Gaddis tied her shoelaces, slipped on her backpack, and waved goodbye to her mother from the kitchen doorway. She was headed to meet her friends at the bus stop, just like every other school day. But this morning would be different. Somewhere between her front door and the corner of the street, Miranda vanished. No one saw her board the bus. No one saw her return home. It was as though she had disappeared into thin air. 2 months earlier, her best friend, Ashley Pond, had gone missing under nearly identical circumstances. Same neighborhood, same routine, same unsettling silence. What began as 2 separate missing person cases would soon converge into one of the darkest and most disturbing stories in Oregon's history. A story of trust betrayed and evil hiding in plain sight. Ashley Pond was born on March 1, 1989, in Oregon, into a life already shaped by instability. Her parents, Lowry and Wesley, separated shortly after her birth, leaving Ashley to be raised primarily by her mother. Later, her mother remarried, and Ashley grew up believing her stepfather was her biological dad. That belief was shattered years later when her mother divorced him and Ashley learned the painful truth about her family. Eventually, she began visiting her real father, Wesley, on weekends. On the surface, Ashley was like any other young girl, bright, kind, and full of dreams. She loved hip-hop music, dreamed of becoming a veterinarian, and had a gentle warmth that drew people to her, even though she was often shy around strangers. Her closest friend was Miranda Gaddis. Born on November 18, 1988, Miranda shared much in common with Ashley. They were classmates who loved to dance and were both members of their school's dance team. They practiced together for hours, pushing each other to improve. They also lived in the same apartment complex in a quiet suburb southeast of Portland. But beneath Miranda's cheerful personality was a childhood marked by profound trauma. In February 1995, when Miranda was just 6 years old, her father, Jason, was arrested and later convicted of kidnapping and abusing 2 minors. During his arrest, he used Miranda as a human shield, threatening to harm her if the police did not back away. Officers were eventually able to restrain him and take him into custody. Jason was sentenced to 6 months in jail and 54 years of supervised release. The incident tore Miranda's family apart. Her parents divorced, and her mother later entered a relationship with another man, one who would inflict even deeper harm. That man also abused Miranda and was later convicted. As a result, Miranda and her siblings were removed from their home and placed into foster care for 18 months. During that time, Miranda received therapy through her school to help her cope with the trauma. Through that process, she learned to set firm boundaries and speak up when something felt wrong, skills that would come to define her strength and, in a tragic twist, lead her into yet another dark chapter. Meanwhile, Ashley's life was unraveling in its own devastating way. What had begun as weekend visits with her biological father, Wesley, slowly became dangerous. On Christmas Eve of 2000, after enduring repeated abuse, 12-year-old Ashley reached her breaking point and finally told someone what had been happening. Just 12 days later, on January 5, 2001, Wesley was charged with 40 counts of abuse spanning several years. The case stunned everyone who knew Ashley, the quiet, affectionate girl with the big smile and a love for dancing. Around that same time, a new family moved into the apartment complex where Ashley and Miranda lived. Their daughter, Mallory, joined the same school and quickly became close friends with both girls, eventually joining their dance team as well. Mallory lived with her father, Ward Weaver III, his partner, and her 19-year-old brother, Francis. It was Ward, Mallory's father, whose presence would prove pivotal.
Ward Weaver III was born on April 6, 1963, in California. His life was turbulent from the beginning. When he was 4 years old, his father abandoned the family. His mother remarried a man who drank heavily and was often violent. The family eventually moved to Oregon, where Ward endured years of physical abuse at the hands of his stepfather. Over time, he began directing that anger toward his younger siblings. At 15, Ward learned that his biological father had been imprisoned for abuse, a truth his family had concealed by claiming the man was simply away on a trip. The incident left deep emotional scars. From that point on, Ward's behavior grew increasingly antisocial, setting him on a path that would bring suffering to many others. In 1981, a teenage girl accused him of abuse. Police opened an investigation, but prosecutors declined to file charges, noting that Ward was preparing to leave the state after enlisting in the Navy Reserves.
Ward's time in the military was brief. While enlisted, he met the woman who would become his first wife, but his service ended abruptly just a year later. He was discharged for heavy drinking and abandoning his post. Back home, the violence that had defined his childhood resurfaced. During his wife's 5th month of pregnancy, Ward assaulted her so severely that she required hospitalization. She never pressed charges. In December 1982, their son Francis was born. 2 years later, tragedy struck again, this time from the generation before him. Ward's own father was convicted and sentenced to death for the murder of a young couple whose bodies he had buried in his backyard. Investigators also suspected he may have been responsible for as many as 24 additional killings. As if trapped in a cycle he could not escape, Ward continued down the same destructive path. After relocating to California and remarrying, he assaulted a teenage girl and was sentenced to 3 years in prison. Following his release, Ward returned to Oregon. He and his wife opened a small shop and had more children, but once again, violence followed him home. His wife eventually filed for divorce and obtained a restraining order. Left to raise his children alone, Ward soon entered another relationship, one that ended no differently than the others. In 1995, after physically assaulting his new partner, he was sent back to prison. When he was released, she chose not to testify against him. Astonishingly, the two reconciled and eventually married. But any sense of stability was short-lived. While working as a mail clerk at a small business, Ward began seeing another woman and ultimately abandoned his wife. By that point, only his youngest daughter, Mallory, lived with him. Frances, now a troubled teenager, had left home. Around the year 2000, however, Francis found himself in serious trouble after being caught in another state firing a rifle at a truck filled with teenagers. With nowhere else to go, he was sent back to live with his father. Inside that home, where Mallory's innocence shielded her from the darkness surrounding her family, Ashley Pond and Miranda Gaddis spent much of their time. The 3 girls were inseparable. After school, they walked together to buy snacks, laughed for hours, and often stayed up late during sleepovers, watching horror movies and whispering secrets. Ward appeared pleased by their frequent visits. By then, his girlfriend had left him, and Frances had moved out again, leaving Ward alone in the house with only his young daughter and her friends. That fragile calm was shattered in August 2001 when Ashley reported to police that Ward had attempted to assault her. At the same time, Ashley's biological father, Wesley, was awaiting trial on 40 charges of abuse she had previously reported. Desperate to avoid prison, Wesley and his attorney crafted a defense not based on innocence but on destroying Ashley's credibility, portraying her as unstable and dishonest.
When Wesley learned that Ashley had also accused Ward, he immediately passed the information to his lawyer, who confronted Ward. Ward's response was chilling. He agreed to testify in Wesley's favor and claim that Ashley had fabricated everything. These manipulative tactics, combined with an aggressive effort to discredit the girls, succeeded. In a plea deal favorable to Wesley, prosecutors dropped all but one charge. He received only 120 months of probation. Ward faced no consequences at all. No one realized that day, when Wesley and his attorney celebrated their so-called victory, that Ward now felt both emboldened and enraged. He believed himself untouchable, and he was free to seek revenge on the 12-year-old who had dared to speak out. Then came the morning of January 9th, 2002. Ashley left her home to walk to the bus stop, just as she did every school day. But that morning, she never arrived. Her trail vanished completely. Despite no history of running away, police quickly classified her disappearance as a runaway case. No large-scale search was launched. No serious investigation followed. Friends and family organized their own searches. Among them was Miranda. At first, she felt a fear she couldn't explain, a deep sense that something terrible had happened. She tried to convince herself that Ashley had simply run away. It seemed like the only explanation. After all, Ashley hadn't contacted anyone, not Miranda, not Mallory, not a single friend. But as days passed with no word, her unease grew into dread. The story spread through the community, and local media soon took notice. When interviewed, Miranda spoke of her confusion and heartbreak. To her, Ashley was like a sister. The school's dance team organized a fundraiser to offer a reward for information leading to Ashley's return. Miranda volunteered to perform a solo dance in tribute to her missing friend. The performance was scheduled for March 23, 2002, but Miranda would never take the stage. On the morning of March 8th, everything appeared normal.
On the morning Miranda disappeared, her mother, Michelle, left for work after seeing her 13-year-old daughter in the kitchen, getting ready for school. Everything appeared normal, but just after 1:30 p.m., Michelle received a phone call from her eldest daughter. Miranda hadn't shown up for class. When Michelle called the school to confirm, her worst fears began to take shape. Miranda hadn't attended a single class that day. Nearly 2 months had passed since Ashley Pond vanished, and this time Michelle didn't hesitate. She immediately contacted authorities. The FBI quickly stepped in, forming a special task force to search for both girls. At a press conference, an FBI spokesperson confirmed what many feared, that investigators now believed the two disappearances were connected and that foul play was likely involved. The agency announced a $50,000 reward for information leading to the girls' safe return or the arrest of whoever was responsible. Posters bearing Ashley and Miranda's faces appeared across Oregon. Soon the case spread beyond state lines, drawing national and even international attention. In front of cameras and microphones, both mothers pleaded for help. Michelle insisted her daughter would never have willingly gone with a stranger. Lowry, who had remained silent for weeks after Ashley vanished, finally spoke publicly, breaking down as she begged for answers. By mid-March, FBI profilers arrived to assist local authorities. On television, agents urged residents to remain vigilant and to watch for subtle changes, someone new in the neighborhood, increased drinking or drug use, or a person who seemed unusually restless, staying up all night. They didn't explain why, but the message was unmistakable. The danger might be closer than anyone imagined. Fear spread quickly through the community. What had once been a lively neighborhood, children playing outside, neighbors chatting on porches, fell silent. Parents didn't know what to fear.
Was there a stranger lurking near the bus stop, or was it someone familiar, someone who had knocked on doors that very morning after Michelle left for work? Some families couldn't endure the uncertainty and chose to move away. One neighbor gave voice to what many were thinking. She told reporters she agreed with the mothers. It had to be someone they knew. If a stranger had abducted the girls violently, someone would have seen or heard something. Instead, Ashley and Miranda had simply vanished. As reporters continued digging, one local journalist began to notice troubling inconsistencies in the investigation. 2 early tips pointed her toward a man who had been close to both girls, Ward. When she reached out, Ward agreed to speak without hesitation. Eager to appear cooperative, he invited her into his home and encouraged her to record the interview. Sitting calmly on his couch, he smiled as he denied knowing anything about the girls' disappearances. His demeanor was unsettlingly relaxed. Ward acknowledged that his past and his connection to both Ashley and Miranda made him an obvious suspect, but he insisted he had nothing to hide. Without being prompted, he brought up Ashley's prior accusation against him and even referenced his own father's violent criminal history. He claimed he wasn't afraid of the FBI and welcomed any investigation. When asked where he had been during the girls' disappearances, Ward replied simply that he had been home. Before leaving, the journalist asked for a tour of the house. Ward agreed, walking her through the rooms, starting with the bedrooms. What she couldn't see, behind the smiles and confident words, was the darkness lurking beneath the surface. As the interview continued, Ward led her outside to the backyard. He spoke casually as they stepped onto a patch of freshly poured concrete. The reporter remembered the rumors whispered among neighbors, questions about that strange new slab behind his house. When she asked about it, Ward offered the explanation he'd already given others. He said he was planning to install a hot tub. In the days that followed, Ward failed 2 separate polygraph tests. He dismissed the results, blaming what he called police incompetence. As the case drew national attention, he continued to deny any involvement. During a morning talk show appearance, he even accused Lowry, Ashley's mother, of being an irresponsible parent. Despite growing suspicion, several neighborhood girls publicly defended him. They said they had never felt threatened in his presence. For some, his home had even become a place of comfort, a refuge from the fear that gripped the community after Ashley and Miranda disappeared. Ironically, with police officers and reporters constantly surrounding the property, many in the neighborhood began to see Ward's home as the safest place to be. To outsiders, Ward appeared quiet and reserved. To his daughter, Mallory, he was simply a loving father. She adored him and could not imagine he was capable of anything truly monstrous. That illusion would soon be shattered. On August 13, 2002, Ward's son, Francis, called police and reported that his father had attempted to assault his 19-year-old girlfriend. But what truly alarmed investigators was what Francis said next. He told them he believed his father might be responsible for the disappearances of Ashley Pond and Miranda Gaddis. His suspicions centered on the backyard and the concrete slab. Ward was arrested for the attempted assault, and soon afterward, police obtained a search warrant for his property. On Saturday, August 24, 2002, FBI agents began a full-scale excavation of the home and surrounding land. What they uncovered was horrifying. Inside a shed at the back of the property, agents found a microwave box containing the remains of Miranda. The following day, they discovered Ashley's body buried beneath the concrete slab, sealed inside a 200-liter metal barrel, carefully hidden underground. Both girls were identified through dental records. Investigators learned that just 3 days after Miranda disappeared, Ward had hired Francis to help prepare the ground for the concrete slab. Francis dug a large pit, placed metal barrels inside, and covered them with dirt, never suspecting what his father intended. After Miranda vanished, Ward told his son he would finish the job alone. The revelations sent shockwaves through the community. Friends, family members, and neighbors gathered across the street for a candlelight vigil. Miranda's older sister stood silently among them, her face hidden beneath the hood of her sweatshirt. When she briefly lifted it, her pale skin and swollen eyes revealed a grief too heavy for words. Michelle later told reporters that concern also weighed heavily on everyone's mind for Mallory. Following her father's arrest, Mallory had been placed in temporary state custody, and no one had seen her all weekend. Michelle said she couldn't begin to imagine the pain Mallory was enduring, grieving her best friends while confronting the reality that her own father might be responsible. On October 2, 2002, Ward was formally charged with abuse, desecration of a corpse, and 6 counts of aggravated murder. Although there were only 2 victims, state law allowed multiple murder charges under different aggravating circumstances. His bail was set at $1 million. From jail, Ward continued to fight. In a series of interviews, he claimed he was being framed and showed reporters documents he said proved prosecutors had no direct evidence against him. He accused police of covering up the real killers, insisting the girls had been murdered by members of a drug and biker gang, a bizarre conspiracy theory. Some of the documents did reveal investigative gaps, including autopsies that could not conclusively determine how or exactly when the girls died. Still, the district attorney maintained that the circumstantial evidence was overwhelming. As months passed, Ward's confidence began to erode. After his televised jail interviews, prosecutors imposed a gag order to prevent him from speaking to the media. Soon after, his defense attorneys asked to withdraw from the case, claiming he had stopped communicating with them. When the court denied the request, they argued that Ward was mentally unfit to stand trial. During the hearing, Ward sat silently with his head bowed. He was sent to the Oregon State Hospital for evaluation. After a brief stay, doctors determined he was competent, and the case resumed. On August 25, 2003, the court announced that the trial would be moved to another jurisdiction to ensure impartiality. Ward did not attend, appearing detached or perhaps resigned. Finally, in September 2004, during a court session covered by national media, Ward pled guilty to the most serious charges and chose not to contest the rest. He remained silent throughout, answering only the judge's direct questions. Under a plea agreement, Ward avoided the death penalty and was sentenced to 2 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole. Years later, in 2009, Miranda's younger sister visited Ward twice in prison, searching for answers and closure. During those visits, Ward confessed not only to killing Miranda and Ashley, but to planning to kill her next. He claimed that on the morning Miranda disappeared, she had walked up the hill toward the bus stop and accidentally witnessed something he was doing. Frightened, she was manipulated into his control. Ward admitted to using Ashley as bait to lure Miranda closer, sealing her fate through deception. As for Ashley, he said he killed her because he feared she would report him for abuse, a fear that ultimately became the motive for the deaths of 2 innocent girls. Thank you for watching True Crime Stories. Share your thoughts and see again in the next episode.